What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the NCAA Tournament Betting Preview, Part 1. I'm Stuckey. Joining me today, my fellow BBOC co-host, Mike Calabrese, Tanner McGrath. Today we will cover every game on the board for Thursday's slate. We'll have an episode out tomorrow for Friday's slate. It is the best time of the year. I can't even remember the last time I thought about sleep. If you want to pay off some of my work, I'll have about 10,000 words on the app going through all the 13 through 15 seeds, a huge statistical breakdown of the entire field. Got contests. I'm running contests. I'm joining brackets to fill out, matchups to break down, bets to make. It's just a bonanza. It's the best time of the year. This high will sustain me until Thursday, and then the games will sustain me until Monday, and then I can maybe get some sleep. But, gentlemen, it's the most wonderful time of the year. You ready to get into some of these games?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I can't wait to dig into it. I was also pulling double duty, doing a little Action Network payoff pitch, talking about the Japan series between the Dodgers and the Cubs. But I'm going to be lying if I didn't have a little side eye on all my notes for this particular podcast, so I'm excited to dig into it.
I have no time for baseball right now. All right, let's start off. We'll go in chronological order, and so we'll start with the first game, 12:15 Eastern on CBS. You can hear the CBS music already. Creighton versus Louisville in Lexington. Louisville's a 2.5-point favorite, total 145.5. Louisville kind of got shafted with this seed that's been talked about a lot. I mean, since January 1st, per Torvik, they're 11th in the country. They should have Rain Smith back as well, provide some spacing and some additional shooting. I keep going back and forth in this game. Like, I'm pretty close to market on the line, and I know that in my bracket, like, this is the first game. Friend of the show and fellow podcast host Jim Root, I saw him tweet, like, this is the game that no matter who you pick, you know it's just going to be wrong in your bracket. That's where I stand right now. And by the way, I do think that Creighton has some interesting schematic things that they do that maybe could give Auburn some trouble. And Louisville would be playing with a semi-home court advantage. I just am not I'm not like that confident, so confident in either one of them that I'm willing to, in my bracket, so to speak, to move them past Auburn. But I think that they have the wings that could potentially score against the caulk drop Creighton defense. So, I don't know. As of now, I'm leaning Louisville. Not a strong take for me. Might not have a bet on this. Maybe I'll throw in a round robin or something. Chandler, I'll go to you. You got anything here?
Yeah, I took Louisville. Money line, minus 135. I think minus 140 or better. You mentioned, the obvious fact the game is being played in Lexington. I think that's a bit of a home court advantage, and that's probably baked into the line. But I still like the Cardinals here. You mentioned one reason. But the main reason for me is just on the defensive end, where I think Hepburn and the Cardinals can blitz and swallow up Ashworth and force the kind of turnover-prone Blue Jays into a lot of mistakes. And you'll see the Cardinals shift defensive coverages, but they'll play straight up and they'll ISO funnel a lot, which I don't think the motion-based Blue Jays are super comfortable with. And most importantly, Louisville is a good post-up defense. They're 0.8 points per possession allowed in those sets, top 25 nationally. I think they can hang with Kalkbrenner underneath, stop Creighton's off-ball perimeter actions, and then stifle Ashworth. I like the defensive matchup for them. I am worried about if James Scott gets into foul trouble or if Louisville decides to post double and then Creighton just kind of bombs away from deep. But again, this isn't your typical McDermott offense at Creighton. They shot under 34% from three this year. They're not firecrackers.
They're the same caliber of role players and other shooters that are consistent enough, especially away from home.
Yeah.
Like, they're so reliant on Ashworth and Kalkbrenner. And in this particular matchup, I think Louisville can, for the most part, barring foul trouble or outlier performances. I think for the most part they match up pretty well. So then I think it's going to be on those other ancillary guys. And I'm not sure I fully trust them.
Yeah, neither do I. And on the other end of the court, like you said, the wing creation, like, all right, so the calc drop, it's going to take away all of Louisville's precious catch and shoot opportunities. But the Cardinals, they have dribble creators that could beat drop coverage. You know, Hepburn, Hadley, Edwards. And they just played 4 drop-heavy defenses. They were great against Cal. They were great against Stanford. And they were great against Clemson. They struggled against Duke, but everyone struggles against Duke. The point is, I think they're ready and prepped to move into primary creation in this first-round matchup. And I don't know. I mean, I guess Smith is back. I was a little worried about it. Like, even if he's not 100% or good to go, there's a case to be made that they're better defensively without him, which is where I'm looking for the Cardinals to win this matchup. So I like Louisville in the first game of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, we referred to drop or caulk drop or drop coverage. I know people not everyone is in tune with college basketball lingo. But Tanner, do you want to just give a 15-second summary of what that means?
Yeah, sure. So drop coverage is the most passive of ball screen coverage or pick and roll coverage. So in a ball screen, the guard defender, the backcourt defender, the primary defender will go over the screen and usually funnel the ball handler into the middle of the court, where the lower defender or the front court defender will sag towards the rim. And what that ultimately does is that it funnels that primary creation into the middle of the court, where they usually have to pull up in the mid-range over the top of your drop defender at the rim. And at the same time, your other 3 defenders on the outside of the ball screen can stay on the off-ball shooters and the off-ball guys. So it denies a lot of those, kicks to the corners and stuff, and really just funnels on-ball creation into the middle of the court. And Creighton and their calc drop does that better than anyone.
Yeah, you got to have a guy like Kalkbrenner at the rim to do that effectively. And the profiles that you'll see for these drop-heavy defenses are like low 3-point attempt rate allowed, low turnover rate,
low assist rate allowed.
Yeah, low assist rate allowed, and teams that can beat them, have good dribble creators and can thrive in the mid-range. Calabrese, what are you looking at here at Creighton Louisville?
I'm just going to go with a player prop just to get someone on the board. You can't have the first game go off without any action. Stephen Ashworth, it's actually plus money, plus 130 out in the market to go over 3.5 made triples. In the last quarter of the season, his last 9 games, he averaged over 9 3-point attempts per game. He's a career 38% shooter. I think this is a great bet at plus money, just because, yes, I do think they're going to blitz him to a certain degree. I think there's going to be turnovers. But offensively, outside of calc, like, he's somebody who's just going to get his shots up. There's to see this trend line for the last quarter of the season, to see how comfortable he is trying to take over. And this is his last ride. I mean, he's 25 years old. He's been playing college basketball for half of a decade. I don't think he's going to go out quietly. And this Louisville defense gives up 8 triples per game at a 33.7% clip. Both are slightly below national averages. So they gamble defensively in other places on the floor and allow you to shoot from distance. And he's certainly one of the best to do it in college basketball. So the fact that I can get it at plus money, that was enough to move me onto this bet.
All right, let's move on to the second game. High Point versus Purdue. This will tip off 12:40 on True TV. Familiarize yourself with where True TV is. Remember where that channel is. This game will tip off in Providence, Rhode Island. Purdue an 8-point favorite, total 153.5. Hey, we just talked about the caulk drop. It's a good transition because we have the Bodo drop for High Point. They play drop coverage. Problem is they don't do it well. And I mean, Bodo, who is their big, he's their 7-footer. He is a good defender, obviously with his length, but no one else on High Point can really defend. That's their issue. And they're going up against Braden Smith, who can destroy drop coverage, especially bad drop coverage. Why? Well, what did we just talk about? Mid-range. High Point, 348th in mid-range attempt allowed. Well, Smith in that Purdue offense, 28th in mid-range attempt rate, 11th in mid-range percentage. They should be very comfortable running their pick and roll. TKR, I think could even have some success in the post. Bodo, a lot of length, but the High Point post defense just grades out in the 15th percentile nationally. Purdue's defense does have issues. So what is the path here for High Point? Because High Point, extremely experienced, one of the deepest teams in the country, let alone mid-majors. I mean, they won their conference championship by just bringing in a bench unit and coming back to win the game, and they just stuck with their bench unit throughout. They just have a ton of different wings that can drive, kick it out to shooters who are elite in catch and shoot situations. So there's a reason. This offense finished 25th in overall adjusted efficiency. They can score in bunches. They have many different avenues to do so. Now, I will say, they didn't play a single high major team this year. Their only result against the tourney team was Norfolk State. They lost 77-74. So how do they win this game? Honestly, I think they have to score 90, which they could on a good day, but the Purdue defense has issues. There's some exploitable areas in this Purdue defense that can be attacked. And I do trust the High Point offense to put up points. My bet in this game, though, the thing that I'm most confident in is Purdue scoring at will. I know that they shoot 5% less from three away from home, which worries me a bit. And this is like an early tip, so maybe there's a slow start. So I thought about waiting to get this live, but I think Purdue's getting into the 80s at least. So I'm playing Purdue team. I played Purdue team total over. Calabrese, what are you looking at here?
Over 153.5 for a lot of the same reasons that you just put out there, but I would put an exclamation point on Purdue's defensive issues inside the arc. 350th in 2-point percentage defense. It's a layup line. They give up 28 points per game at the rim, and as you pointed out, there's a High Point team that hunts those 2-point shots inside of 10 feet. I think there's an opportunity for them to score 75 plus on their own, even in a losing effort. So I think this game is going to have a chance to touch $170. I mean, honestly, you could see so many separate players going off in this. Kaufman-Renn has been eating up Big Ten competition really for the past 2 weeks. I think he can go for 25 plus without breaking a sweat. And Smith, if he is feeling it early in the mid-range, I don't think there's any answers for this High Point defense. So 153.5, I think, is off by about 5 or 6 points. I agree. Sometimes you get these sleepy starts. At least it's not a morning local time tip. But even with that said, I'm going to go over on the total.
You're on board here too, Tanner?
Yep, clean sweep, more or less. I think it's a straightforward handicap over 153.5. You mentioned it, High Point soft drop coverage defense. That's going to get roasted by Braden Smith. And they really struggle in High Point, really struggles in post-up defense. 0.96 points per possession allowed. That's sub 300 nationally. So Trey Kaufman-Renn can eat here on post-up sets too. A Purdue team that struggles with, they don't have a lot of depth. They kind of just have two guys. They can just play the two-man game and score every single dime down the court for 40 minutes. And on the other end of the court, like you mentioned, like High Point, they're a top 25 offense for a reason. And Purdue is a horrific interior defense for a reason. The Panthers are great in hard roll creation. Purdue doesn't stop that. The Panthers are great off the dribble and in isolation creation. Purdue can't stop that either. High Point is, like Stuckey mentioned, an elite spacing and shooting team, especially in catch and shoot creation. And Purdue allows a ton of catch and shoot creation. And on top of that, I think they've gotten really lucky this year in that regard. I mean, opponents shot 31% on unguarded catch and shoot jumpers against Purdue this year on high volume. That 0.92 points per possession is the sixth lowest mark nationally and about 0.2 off expectations. Their past 10 opponents have shot under 30% from deep on high volume. I think the Panthers need to hit their shots here to keep up, but I do think Purdue is due for someone to hit shots against them. I mean, the one big worry is pace. Could be a slower pace game, but I'm not going to overthink it. Dead shot over.
Efficiency should be through the roof.
Yep, exactly.
And also, I think Purdue, if the shots are going in, I think it's easy for them to be coaxed into playing a little bit faster. If they're playing faster and it's working, why slow it down and try to muck it up? Particularly with all of those early exits in Matt Painter's career. It's like you don't want to mess around and give it a team that is, inferior in a lot of ways a chance to hang around by making it a low possession game. So I'm going to at least hope that Matt Painter learned his lessons from some of those early exits.
Bracket wise, I have Purdue winning and then going down in the next round.
I agree.
Calabrese?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not enamored with this Purdue team. I think that they have certain limitations, namely outside of who scores outside of their top two guys. In this matchup, both of them have the exact kind of schematic look that, plays into their hands. But after that, once they get deeper into the tournament, I think teams that have a little bit more defensively to throw at them, even coaches that just want to bury up their looks, I think they're going to run into trouble.
I will say that this matchup is probably pretty high variance. Like if High Point just, hits everything from deep, they could probably win outright. I just can't get there with the defense. It's too soft.
Yeah, they got to win in a shootout. A UNC, one of their UNC Asheville games, kind of like that.
Exactly.
Maybe not in the hundreds, but like the low 90s, high 80s. That's how I think they have to win. So they'll win like 54-51. That's how this works. All right, let's move on to Denver. Montana taking on Wisconsin. Wisconsin 17.5-point favorite, total 151.5. This game will tip off 1:30 Eastern on TNT. Calabrese, I'm looking. I don't share any notes. I don't even look at any of the outlines. You guys just put down what your picks are. I just pull it up right when we start recording. You're going to try to make a case for Montana. No, thank you. I never ever trust the Big Sky in the NCAA tournament. I remember someone telling me that like 10 years ago. Actually longer than that. I'm so much older than I think sometimes. This is it's probably like 10 years ago actually. And it's just so true. I haven't faded them enough, but they just don't profile well when they step up in class. I mean, look at Montana this year. Montana played Oregon, lost 79-48. Tennessee, 92-57. Utah State, they lost 95-83. What do you notice there? They can't stop anybody. Their offense still works. Their offense 89th in games against the top 100, but they went 1-6, and their defense ranked 313th. So, and Travis DeCuire, the Montana coach, 8-24 against the spread against power conferences, failing to cover by 6 points per game. And to put numbers to the Big Sky performance in the dance, 1-24 straight up, 7-16-2 against the spread since 2000. It's lost 18 straight games, hasn't defeated a high major this century. Only win came in 2006 against Nevada. Montana does have a very good offense. And look, they're a different team since they inserted Kai Johnson into the starting lineup. And it hasn't hurt that they shot 41% from three since February 1st. But I don't really love the matchup here because they want to attack the rim relentlessly off the dribble. They just want to drive, get to the rim. They're good finishers there, but I don't see how they're going to do that against Wisconsin's size. Now, they do have shooters, and they've been shooting it well. That's their path here because they have no size. They're going to get no offensive rebounds. They're just going to have to go nuclear from three. But their offense is good. And there's opportunities to score on Wisconsin. On the other end, though, I just don't know how Montana's stopping Wisconsin. They do a great job of limiting three-point attempts, base drop, and that's helpful against Wisconsin. But they don't have any size. Like Wisconsin should just eat inside. And I mean, this is a porous mid-major defense. They're 250th in adjusted defensive efficiency, and the numbers get worse when they step up in class. The only thing, this would have been an easy click for me.
But I feel like you're going to say it, Stuck. But
yeah, the schedule. But I'm still not playing Montana. But this would have been an easy click over Wisconsin because Wisconsin would have gotten 90 if under normal circumstances. But they played 4 in 4 days, were completely gassed, cost me my future, and their legs are gone. Now they get shipped out to Denver and have to play the early game against a team that's already acclimated to altitude. Usually takes like 1 to 3 days. So are the legs now? Now, Tanjay did play at Colorado State. So maybe that's helpful. He's played in altitude before. But that little uncertainty probably keeps you on the sidelines. It's still Montana. I mean, it's still Wisconsin over or nothing for me. But I'm probably passing unless this line comes down. But Calabrese, do you have anything to add there to the Montana case? You're just betting on the Wisconsin legs here?
Yeah, I mean, fifth game in a week for Wisconsin at altitude. You mentioned it. How battle tested is Montana at altitude? Well, the Big Sky has 4 of the top 20 highest elevations in the sport. So they're constantly playing at elevation. And yes, the blowout losses to Oregon and Tennessee, I think it's inflated this number. 17.5 just seems rich to me for a team that can be so efficient around the basket. Inside of 15 feet, they're top 20 in shooting efficiency in the entire country. And you mentioned Travis DeClure. He's been here twice in the NCAA tournament in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, they hung with Michigan before fumbling a cover late. They ended up losing that one 61-47, so they mucked it up a little bit. They get Michigan again the next year as a 15 seed, and they lost by 19. They weren't totally outclassed. I think you'd have to be crazy to call for a Big Sky outright upset. But the fact is, this is an awful situational spot for Wisconsin. Also, beyond just the fifth game in a week, coming off emotionally the opportunity to win the Big Ten, which meant so much to them, to now roll into a game where everybody across the country is basically picking them and think they should win in a laugher. Well, if their legs aren't there and those threes aren't going down and Montana can get out and, check those shooters a little bit, I think this could be interesting in the second half. I think they'll win by double digits, but 17.5 screams Wisconsin blowout. And these other factors outside of just the basketball, I think it trends towards Montana.
My only thing, though, is that and by the way, altitude teams have been horrendous in the tournament.
But usually they don't get to play at altitude again.
Yeah, that's
so this is special in that regard.
A lot of that's because they don't have that altitude advantage that they have during the regular season. A lot of that's just been the Mountain West ineptitude. But that is probably not applicable here. But my other point, Montana wants to take away the 3, but I feel like that hurts them here. Because Wisconsin can shoot and they're going to throw up a ton of 3s. But I feel like you should just hope that Wisconsin's fatigued and let them shoot a bunch of 3s because they're going to be able to score at the rim. And that's my issue here, Tanner. I think you're leaning towards what I was saying.
Yeah, I have the exact same thoughts as you. I lean Wisconsin and over. It shouldn't be hard for Wisconsin to score. You're right. They don't need to shoot 3s because Montana's defense, they can't stop the dribble. They can't protect the rim, and they get shredded in the post. Wisconsin can feed the rock to the Tanji, Blackwell, Klesmit trio, let them cook in ball screens, or they can feed Winter and Crawl in the post, let them work in the post. I mean, it gets more interesting on the other end of the court. Like you said, Breeze, like Montana is an elite interior offense. The problem is that Wisconsin's the best rim denial defense in the nation, arguably. I mean, nobody gets to the rim against that wall. Now, Montana, they do space the floor well, and they generate that high unguarded catch and shoot rate. But Wisconsin also is an elite catch and shoot denial defense because of that 2 big drop. I do think, however, like Stuckey said, there are some opportunities. And I think the way that Montana scores here is that the Badgers' drop coverage is susceptible to like really good dribble and ISO creation. Like Braden Smith against High Point. And Montana has a lot of that in the backcourt and in the wings. I think they could snake the ball screen. They can get into the paint. Yeah, Monty Williams is great. Brandon Whitney, all these guys. And so like I said, I lead Badgers in the over here. Badgers should score at will. Big Sky teams never play up in competition, but Montana has some avenues to offense. I can't get there either, Stuckey, because the short turnaround spot to altitude. And my worry for the over is Montana trying to rely entirely on dribble and ISO creation rather than penetrate and dish. I just don't think that's their base offense. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
All right, let's move on to this game, which we probably won't spend much time on. This is about as ugly as it gets. Houston minus 28.5 against SIUE. This is the 116 matchup in Wichita. This game will tip at 2 p.m. Eastern on TBS. Now, I will say, historically, and this is just doesn't mean it's going to hit in the future, but historically, when there's a big favorite with a really low total, favorites have done well, and the overs have done really well, like extremely well. Totals under 135, favorite of like over 16 points. My hypothesis there is that what happens is you have like a dominant defense and slow-paced team like Houston playing like a team the market doesn't think is going to score, but like Houston is just able to score at will. And then like the higher seed is able to just score at will. And then the lower seed, which usually plays slower, is like getting blown out and just has to play way faster than they usually do.
And then the higher seed just gives up in the second half.
Yeah.
I think that happened to Houston last year, where it was like 59 first half points and then like 75 in the second half.
And I hate betting. Like Houston's built to win this game by 40.
Yep.
But I hate betting these 26, 28, 30 point spreads because what ends up happening, unless you're like up 45, is in the tournament is that you're going to have Houston knows they play on Saturday. So they're going to pull this, like they're up 36. I need like such a huge edge to plays. They're going to pull their starters, and it's going to be Houston's bbackups versus SIUE starters all the way to the end with just shenanigans. Like this is going to come down to like a Houston walk on, like shooting a 1-and-1 with like a minute to go, and then does SIUE hit a 3? So I know like Houston historically wins these games and blows these teams out. I don't know. I will say the only time this is like an anomaly. This is the second time ever in the history of the tournament there's been a favorite of 28 or more points with a total under 131, and this is at 126.5. It's only happened one other time. It was UCLA versus Calabrese's beloved Delta Devils of Mississippi Valley State in 2008. UCLA won 70-29. So, honestly, could I see that score happening? Maybe. I don't know SIUE scores. They need to get in transition. That's it. They can't score in the half court. So you can't score in transition against Houston. So what's the path here? Taylor just gets red hot. That's about it. I got nothing here. Do you have anything, Tanner?
A lot of the same thoughts as you. I have zero interest in betting these 16 versus 1 games. I also don't like betting big spreads, and it seems like a crapshoot at the end of the game. You could do worse than to bet it under here, though. Like you said, like you mentioned, SIUE, they're going to get nothing. They are a horrific half-court offense going up against the most dominant, swarming half-court defense on the planet. That shuts down every low major team that faces. The Cougars played 4 Ken Pop sub 200 teams this year and held all 4 under 50 points. And obviously, you have to be good in catch and shoot creation to beat Houston. That's the only way to beat the ball screen blitz, which Edwardsville is not. Now, like you mentioned, SIUE is a decent transition offense. Houston is the nation's best transition denial defense, right? Now, on the other end of the court, Houston spends 0 time running the open court. Like, they don't like to get out in transition. They're all primary creation, just off the dribble, post feeds. SIUE is a good dribble defense. They're a good post-up defense, too. They rank above the 90th percentile in points per possession allowed against both sets. Against who? I don't really know. But I think this game's too unpredictable, like under or nothing for me.
But maybe in that, what we were talking about, maybe a first half under.
Yeah, that's not a bad look at all.
Might be worth better looking because then and before the game just gets completely squirrely. Yeah, SIUE. I think if the way SIUE covers is just like if Rayshon Taylor goes nuts, and then if he doesn't, they don't cover. But there also still just could be just late game shenanigans. But Houston does usually cover these spreads in the first round. Calabrese, what do you got here?
Yeah, Rayshon Taylor is going to fire up 1,000,000 shots in this game, and we know that because he played Indiana and Illinois early in the season, took 37 shots in those 2 games. So he's just going to fire up like 20 shots, give it a chance. I'm going to go with SIU first to 10 in this game. I've seen it now up to 5-1 in the market. And here's my argument very simply. 2 years ago against Northern Kentucky, the Norse cashed against Houston in the same exact spot, a 16 versus 1, race to 10. I think it was 9-2 out in the market. And when you look at Houston in the last, let's call it 7 games, to reach 10 points on average, it's taken them 6.5 minutes. They played Arizona, BYU, Colorado, Baylor, Kansas, Cincy, Tech. They had some games where they went through the motions early. It's human nature to say, of course, we're going to win this game. We don't necessarily need to come out gangbusters offensively. And I would much rather have an early bet in a game like this than be sweating, in terms of foul shots, in terms of their intention. Are they just emptying their bench? Are they running the shot clock down late in the game? Do they even care? I can just see that last possession where they just hand the ball over to the opponent. They don't even want to take a shot. I don't want to mess with that at all. So race to 10. I have a few of these exotics on my Thursday, Friday card. I think if you can get it at 5-1, it's worth a shot.
You better hope Houston doesn't score for the first 12 minutes. All right. It's like 10-9, 13 minutes into the game on a Rayshon Taylor 3. All right. We're obviously not going to cover the other 16-1 that'll tip off at 2:50 Eastern in the South region between Auburn and whoever wins the Alabama State St. Francis game. If you're filling out your bracket, feel free to move Auburn on safely. I will spend this time talking 2 minutes about the South region bracket. Fascinating to me. So this bracket came out and everyone was healthy. I have Iowa State in the Final Four, getting their revenge over Auburn. But now, without Gilbert, I'm not fully convinced on everything that's going on with Iowa State. He is important. I still think they can make a run. I don't believe in this Michigan State offense. They still have some three-point regression coming on both ends. I'm fully convinced of it. But, especially in games in the tournament when you got to score in the half court, I just don't trust the Michigan State offense. Call me a hater. I think that they could lose in the second round. But I'm probably going to have Iowa State still getting through to the Elite Eight. The question is, since I'm not fully confident on them, I can't put them in the Final Four. So I'm like, am I going to knock off Auburn? I told you before, I'm not so confident in Louisville or Creighton. And then I think Texas A&M has the best shot of knocking off Auburn, but I'm not fully convinced that they're going to get through Yale and Michigan and or UC San Diego. I think they actually match up better with, they match up pretty well with Michigan because they can just destroy them on the offensive glass. But so I don't know. So I think by default, this is going to be a chalky region for me. I might have, I don't know. I just might have Auburn coming through. Tanner, what are you doing with the South region?
Auburn or nothing. I wish I could take.
You have nothing filled out. Just leave it blank.
Actually, when I first filled out my bracket, I printed it out 10 minutes after Selection Sunday, just went through it. I did think Texas A&M gets through because you're right. If they get through Yale and they face Michigan, let's say, they'll have that's a good path to the Sweet 16, and they have a good chance of knocking off Auburn, who's bad on the defensive glass and has been slashing down the stretch. But I don't have a lot of interest in a lot of these teams. Like you said, Iowa State's banged up. Still don't trust Michigan State. I don't know. I think you're right. By default, you got to go Auburn.
Calabrese, what are you doing in the South?
Yeah, it's Auburn for me. I have to pump the brakes on my overall excitement about what New Mexico could do and be like, let's just start with one win from the Mountain West in the round of 64. I agree. Iowa State was a team I was hyping up all year. I was just like, they're back, they're healthy, they got a full deck. They lose in that classic against BYU, 3 weeks ago when they forced 30 turnovers. It's like, all right, this team is ready to make a deep run. And then losing Gilbert not only throws off your starters, but then it forces Jones into the starting lineup, who's a phenomenal player, but then you lose all of what he brings off the bench, 6th man of the year. So I just don't think they're going to have enough if they get into an absolute war with Auburn in the Elite Eight. I just love really just how scrappy Auburn has been. And they've shown that they can win without an absolute elite performance from Janai Broome. And that's not always true for some of these teams that really need their March Madness hero to play out of his mind, particularly in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. I just think Auburn has too many outs, so I'm just going to go with the Tigers there and be chalky.
Yeah, and I might be falling into recency bias because I do think that it's just that Auburn hasn't looked great. But they probably just were checked out looking ahead to the tournament, knowing that.
And once they get out of the NCC,
locked in with a target on you for so long. It was 6 weeks of everyone's Super Bowl was playing Auburn. So, we certainly give the benefit of the doubt in college football from time to time, where if you're a top team and other teams are getting up for you constantly, even if you have a close win, it's that's going to happen a little bit. But I think it's an opportunity for Pearl and his staff to get everybody refocused and, make this run.
Yeah, my overall macro bracket hypothesis and philosophy right now in this new portal world based on last year is, and what I'm seeing this year, is that the gap between the top and the bottom is growing. This is the widest we've ever seen the 1 versus the 16s. If you just look ratings, 2 versus 15, widest gap, 3 versus 14. So I think that we're going to continue to see chalky first rounds. Still, hopefully we still have an upset or two and some good games. But for the most part, I think we'll see chalky first rounds. But I think that the parity at the top is growing. So I think that as long as we don't have a UConn for a couple of year stretch, I think that we're going to have better games, and there's going to be more upsets than people are assuming. But so like, I think we probably get. I'm going to say. I say we're probably going to get 113 that wins, maybe 114, no 15s.
What do you mean Brian's going to beat Michigan State?
What's that?
So what do you mean Brian's going to beat Michigan State?
We'll get to that. That's Friday, right?
That's Friday.
That's
yeah.
Friday. Yep.
But the way that I'm so when you're filling out, I think that it's still strong. It's still very strong at the top. So I don't think that you want to completely ignore all of the ones. But if you want to win your bracket pool, like I think a good approach is to have a couple ones and then take a shot with a team in another region. So for me, it's not. I don't think it's going to be the South. One will be in the West for me, and then maybe the Midwest. I'm probably going to have Duke and Auburn, which is very chalky, but I'm going to take my shot elsewhere and hope it works out. I'm also going to have Michigan State going down early, which many might not have.
I'm going to take my shot with Xavier in the Midwest. I think it's
I might be taking my shot with Illinois.
Ooh,
so
tough.
One of us would be happy. But I can see Xavier making a run too. Illinois could lose to Xavier, or they could go to the Final Four. But that's the kind of team that I like if I want to take a shot on them. All right, let's move on to McNeese against Clemson. This game's in Providence on True TV, 3:15 Eastern. Clemson 7.5-point favorite. Total 134.5. I don't have much here. I think the line's close to right. Is this the post height time to buy McNeese? Last year, everyone loved McNeese. They got blown out against Gonzaga. This year, not seeing as much love for McNeese. I haven't really heard many people talk. Have you heard many people talk about this game, or like nothing?
Nope.
No one cared. Like no one is talking about this game. I think it actually could be a pretty entertaining game. I expect McNeese to press a little bit more, try and disrupt Clemson's offense. They read out just okay in that department, but they really struggled against the Memphis press earlier this season. So maybe that's an avenue that McNeese can use. Both teams are vulnerable to offensive rebounds. They're both good on the offensive glass. They both can turn teams over, but they don't turn it over. It's like shot volume could be pretty even here. Although McNeese just gives up many more threes and they're not as good of a shooting team. So that might just be the difference. The other thing is that where I'm kind of stumped on this game is the loss of Dylan Hunter. I think it's big. Like if you look at the most efficient trios in college basketball per Evan Mia, Hunter's in one of the top two, along with Shufflin and Locken. So he's important defensively. He's extremely important. And there's going to be a big drop-off when he's not on the court defensively because you're just going to get more Jake Heidbreder and I forget the freshman's name. Dell Jones. Who there's going to be a drop-off defensively. Now, Heidbreder's an Air Force transfer. He can shoot. So, like, what Clemson has to do here is Heidbreder has to pull his weight making threes because it wasn't like Hunter wasn't anything amazing offensively from a shooting perspective. He shot 31% from three. So Heidbreder needs to pull his weight by making threes, which he's done at like a 38-39% clip to make up for the defensive drop-off. But I still just don't have a great feel for how that's all going to work. I do think it's a pretty underrated loss. So I'm probably just going to be an observer here. I got nothing, Tin. I know you have nothing. Calabrese, do you have anything here?
I'm leaning under. I mean, pressure from both teams. I think it could make it a chore just to get the basketball, into the half court, get good looks. They're both top 25.
That's what McNeese wants to do with their press. Is like,
yeah,
cause you to have super long possessions.
They're both top 25 and forcing you into late shot clock situations. That's all you need to know in terms of what their identity has been across 35 games. Also, I think with Clemson's lack of depth, losing Hunter, that's 22 minutes a game in what was already a short rotation. If McNeese cranks up the defensive pressure just from a fatigue standpoint as well, does Clemson go deeper into their bench, or do they just leave those kids out there to kind of wilt and kind of just have to deal with it? If that's the case, I could see this really becoming a rock fight. So I know that for casuals out there, you don't want to open up your app and look at March Madness. I'm all excited to bet an under at 134. I think that's the only play in a game like this. I could really see narratives go either way for a McNeese upset or Clemson, so I'm staying away on the side, but the total interests me.
Well, Clemson's definitely going to try and slow this to a crawl as much as humanly possible. All right, let's move on to a game I'm really looking forward to. VCU, BYU in Denver. It's the 11-6 matchup. For what it's worth, since I believe I should pull up since 2010, I think 11 seeds are 30 and 26 overall since 2010. Means nothing, but interesting nugget. This is kind of the story of Thursday for me. Like, all of my favorite bets have like a caveat or something's keeping me off, which is just unfortunate because it's all the quick turns. Like, I would have been on Wisconsin in the over, but I'm worried about that quick turnaround in altitude. And then this is another one. We'll get to another one shortly, but VCU played on Sunday in a very physical game against George Mason after winning their conference championship, gets shipped out west to play BYU in altitude. BYU is obviously very used to altitude. And by the way, there's going to be a ton of BYU fans here. This will be a quasi-home game. And BYU has a ton of depth. So there's a couple things. I like VCU in this game because I think this is close to a coin flip. You can just get 3 or better, which is out there now. I think the VCU pressure can disrupt the BYU offense is what this comes down to. What does worry me a bit, and I've already bet VCU, I might look to bet BYU live, try to middle it if VCU's up and the whistle is bad. There's 2 things that could happen. Like, I'm worried about the fatigue of VCU. Can they play how they normally play for 40 minutes? 1, in altitude on, quick turnaround with travel. And 2, if they'll be allowed to do so, with those BYU fans, and are they going to get a bad whistle? So there is some things I'm worried about. VCU's going to have to make some threes here, which they can do. They have shooters that get hot. BYU will allow you to shoot. Very compact defense. But I just think the VCU pressure, because BYU has struggled with pressure at times this year, and that can really, their backcourt in particular, can really be flustered. And VCU is going to bring it in that department. So I like the Rams. Tanner, what are you seeing here?
Also like the Rams. I love Ryan Odom, and I love this press happy scheme. And you're right. Like, look, just to talk about VCU's defense a little bit more, it's elite. It's literally the best half court defense in the nation by points per possession allowed, because they blow up everyone at the point of attack, and they play really extended and viciously deny catch and shoot opportunities because they have the best safety valve big man rim protector in the mid majors in Luke. Oh my God, I forget how to say his name. Bamgaboy, I think. Anyways, monstrous 15% block rate, 2.5 per game. I think it's the second highest block rate nationally. But the VCU is the nation's best rim defense by points per shot allowed, which is so incredible when you combine that with that extended pressure. Now, BYU, elite half court offense, NBA pro style stuff, but it's all built around that penetration from the playmaking forwards, Devin and Hall, and then shot making from the wings, Saunders, Nell, Baker. But BYU, shaky ball handling squad, and they've been blown up by pressure before, like Stuckey said, and VCU will take away BYU's precious catch and shoot opportunities. And on the other end of the court, VCU does want to get downhill in transition and then kick the ball out to shooters. I think that's kind of like their MO. BYU is a good transition denial defense, and their pack line scheme is good at closing off the rim. But the Cougars are a little bit weak in transition defense from an efficiency perspective, and the pack line will allow a lot of jumpers. And if BYU starts to turn it over, VCU will be able to start driving early and then kick often. I really like this schematic matchup for the Rams, and I think 3.5 is a ton in a game that, you're right, Stuck, should be a coin flip. So, yep,
Yeah, and BYU's transition D is really bad. Now, they don't allow a ton of transition. I think like 20th percentile.
Exactly.
They're like grayed out in the 20th percentile efficiency-wise. So if they're coughing it up, I think VCU can get some easy buckets in transition too. Calabrese, you also like the Rams here?
Yeah, I'm on the Rams for a clean sweep. I think they're going to win this one outright. You guys have talked about all the analytics, all the scheme that favors them. Look at some of the comps. They played Colorado State and Nick Clifford. Now, granted, this was before the Rams got red hot, but they absolutely shut him down in an 8-point neutral court victory over the Rams. And then when they played the two top 100 offenses in the A10 in Dayton and St. Joe's, in their win over Dayton, they forced 19 turnovers and held them to 37% shooting. Against St. Joe's, they held them to 33% on Hawk Hill. So I just view this as a potential repeat for BYU when they faced Houston in that recent performance. 13 turnovers, 31% from the field. They were really bothered up and down on both ends of the floor in that game. And now, granted, Houston is one of the best teams in the entire country, but VCU defensively is right there in that conversation. And then the last piece of it is Haslam Metrics talks about consistency. VCU is one of the most consistent teams in the field. BYU is the 9th most inconsistent team in this field of 68. So I think this could really get away from them if BYU doesn't have that magic that helped them go on that run in the Big 12 last month.
All right, clean sweep there. Let's move on to Georgia Gonzaga, 4:35 Eastern on TBS in Wichita, Kansas. Gonzaga 5.5, 6-point favorite, depending where you're betting. Total 150.5 to 151.5. I played Georgia here. I think what this comes down to is like, do you believe Gonzaga is a top 10 team, which they are in many advanced metrics and analytical sites? I'm not there. I think they're really good. I don't think they're a top 10 team. So I think this number is a bit too high. Georgia's been playing really well to close the year. I think Georgia's physicality can cause issues for Gonzaga. I also think Gonzaga's lack of pressure on the ball. They don't really cause turnovers. That's a huge issue for Georgia. They might get a bit of a reprieve there. Blue Kane, X factor here. He's been on fire lately, which has really helped their offense. So I think their physicality in the interior. They have guys that I think can bother Nebhard on the perimeter. I will say though, I played Georgia first half too. I'm starting to like that a little bit more. Still like Georgia at 6, but just because Georgia's they've been so much better in the first halves of games. It's incredible. And Gonzaga is nails at the line. So like if they put a run on Georgia late and then they're just hitting free throws and Georgia's bricking some threes, I could see this like extending out. For what it's worth, an interesting nugget is, and it makes sense to me, is that if you bet on teams over the past 20 years that shoot 77% or more from the line, you'd have gone 87, 52, and 2 against the spread, 63%. And that makes sense to me because, number one, if you have favorites that make all their free throws, teams that extend out. But just think about how many times you bet an underdog, and then they're just missing front ends. And, like, they're just such huge swings, especially in a tourney setting. So there's multiple reasons why free throws will end up deciding a lot of covers and sometimes games in the NCAA tournament. For what it's worth, the teams that shoot 77% or more from the line this year, Colorado State, Michigan State, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Oklahoma, Xavier, Lipscomb, Gonzaga, and Wisconsin is at 82.8%. Just shy of the all-time single season record held by Villanova at 83% just a couple years back. So, yeah, I like Georgia. I like Georgia to keep this within a couple possessions. Throw some on the first half, too, though. They've been much better there. There's a chance Gonzaga extends out and covers this on some late free throws. I'm just not fully sold on Gonzaga as others. Calabrese, what are you seeing here?
You talked about the physicality in the front court for Georgia. I'm going to play that angle by playing under Graham Ike's points at 16.5. Georgia is 13th in points per possession while defending the post. That's Ike's bread and butter. He has the second most post points per game in the entire country, and he can be a foul machine. This is exactly how you cash unders like this in March Madness with only 5 fouls to go around. He has 4 fouls in 3 of his last 4 games, and now he's got to compete with Newell, who at times has just made it hell for his opponents. In that Vandy game, he put up 10 foul shots. Against Florida, their bigs, their three guys who basically were covering the whole time, racked up 12 fouls in that game. I think EK could end up playing less than 25 minutes in this game if he gets into any kind of foul trouble. But even just the physicality when he is on the floor, I don't think there's going to be easy buckets for him. So 16.5, I think, is too rich. I think if the Zags do get past UGA in this spot, it's going to be more so on the perimeter and what they do in transition than necessarily just feeding the post and hoping he gets 8 to 10 points there. I don't think that's the recipe for success, so I'll go under 16.5.
Tanner also.
Yep.
DeVries just accepted Indiana's job.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Tanner, you're on board with Ace and Newell and myself in Georgia, right?
Yeah, I mean, I initially just blindly tailed you on this one, but looked in the game and you guys said it. It's, for me, physicality and size of Georgia. Let Silas DeMary and the huge Bulldog guards swallow up the Nemhard ball screen actions. Let Asa Newell and the tough Bulldog front court rotation battle with Graham Ike down low. Like Bree said, Georgia's an elite post-up defense. That's so important against Gonzaga, and they just have bodies they can throw at Ike. And on the other end of the court, Gonzaga was bullied on the boards by St. Mary's all 3 times. And I think Georgia can live on second chance points, hopefully get to the line enough to win the aggregate shot volume battle despite their turnover issues. That is my biggest worry in this game, just the Georgia turnover issues. But and their transition defense, which I think is a little shaky. But I will take my chances with Georgia. But
I'm hoping that because Gonzaga doesn't really create a ton of havoc defensively, that'll give Georgia some relief and then also help help alleviate some of their transition defense issues.
Yep.
There won't be as many opportunities. I mean, it's not like Gonzaga doesn't force turnovers. They're, I think, maybe right inside the top 100 nationally, but it's not like they're a super elite pressure defense.
This is one of the highest turnover rates of Few's tenure, though. I think he's been trying to gamble more on the perimeter. He's trying to figure something out.
Yeah, they who knows what Few's going to. Few still hasn't figured out this team. Like he's still experimenting on a game-to-game basis, which is very fascinating considering how good they still grade out analytically. All right. Okay. If you're listening to this show, before we get to the night slate, you probably like betting as much as I do. And when it comes to betting, there are 2 things I'm always trying to do: make it easier and make it more profitable. That's why I've partnered with Edgeboost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. Edgeboost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit. Because with the Edgeboost Visa debit card, you get up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're already doing. It's a no-brainer. This isn't some credit card gimmick, I promise. When I first heard about this, before I signed up, I was like, what's the catch here? There is none. They get paid on volume, and it's completely seamless. It is so easy to move money, and you're just getting paid. There's no minimums. It's just a no-brainer to do this. I opened my own personal Edgeboost debit card account, and like I said, I deposited into all of my sportsbook accounts. There's no catch. There's also no hidden fees. There's no minimum balance requirements. That's another thing. None of that. And if you ever had a casino transaction flagged by your bank because they thought it was suspicious or been given the runaround when trying to fund a sportsbook account online, well, the Edgeboost debit card is the perfect tool to alleviate all of those issues. It starts with a $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for gambling activity. That's why I was so happy to open an account. I've been pleased ever since. So make your betting life easier and stop leaving money on the table. Visit Edgeboost.bet to sign up. And if you use promo code BBOC and deposit $25, you'll receive a $25 deposit match plus Tier 2 status for faster bank deposits and more cash back. That's Edgeboost.bet, promo code BBOC. Check it out. Product I'm really passionate about. All right, let's move on to the night slate. 6:50 Eastern in the Midwest region. We're going to Wofford against Tennessee. So TNC, Tennessee 18.5 point favorite, total 132. 2.5. To me, I can't really get here on anything. I mean, this game, here's the thing. On the surface, maybe there's something there with Wofford if they have an outlier shooting day. Because they're going to shoot a ton of threes. They give up a ton of threes. This game should be slow-paced. So, and they rebound well. It's like, from a shot volume perspective, pace, 3 variance, like, if you wanted to get super crazy as a 15, maybe this is where you look. My problem is I just don't know. Number one, their defense, Wofford's defense is bad. I don't know how they're going to match up athletically. These two teams played last year. Tennessee won by 21. There were 65, 66 3-point attempts. That's like what Wofford wants. But in order for Wofford to win, they're going to have to shoot 50% on very high volume. Because I don't think they're going to be able to run their offensive sets through Filowich against a Tennessee size. It's just going to be chuck and pray. So, I don't know. I got nothing here. Easy pass for me. Tanner, do you have anything here?
Nothing. Two teams that'll jack up triples against two compact defensive schemes. Thought Wofford did a really good job in the SoCon tournament on flare screens, but you have to wonder if they're going to see some negative regression. They shot 44% from deep en route to the punching their bid. Can you trust Tennessee to shoot straight on the other end? I mean, the shot quality data on them is surprisingly good. They're top 50 nationally, spacing, shot making metrics. I'm not entirely sure if the eye test matches there. Tennessee also probably overperforming from 3 on defense, but they're so good at contests. Total shooting variance game. I'm out.
Calabrese, do you have anything here?
I'm just going to play the under. I look at this across the entire season. Tennessee was the underiest under team in the SEC and the third best under bet among power conference teams. If you just go by the average margin that they went under, 4.3 points per game. And 5 of their last 7 in the tournament, they've cashed the under as well. I think there's something to be said about how Barnes and his staff prepares. I think he's certainly in a spot like this is going to lean into a defense that can just put them in the hurt locker in the half court. As Tanner just said, they're going to contest every single perimeter shot. And I think it's unlikely that Wofford gets over 55 points in this game. And if that's the case, then I can play with, high 70s with the Vols. There's going to be no late game fouling, no padding the score there. So if I get, let's call it 3 or 4 points in the last 2 minutes, that would be a real boon to this under. So once again, another ugly rock fight feel in terms of, at least from one end of the court for Wofford, but I'll go under.
Yeah, pace will definitely be there for an under. Let's go 7:10 Eastern on CBS. Arkansas taking on Kansas in Providence, Rhode Island. Kansas 4.5 point favorite, total 145.5. A lot of uncertainty in this game in that Boogie Flan, he's supposed to come back, but they played better without him. How are they going to assimilate him into the lineup? There's still no Thero, who I think is really important, but Brazil's played really well in his absence. Is Ivica healthy? He has back spasms in his wrist, and then he's out of the lineup. He needs to because Arkansas doesn't really have the type of offense that can give Kansas's defense issues, unless Ivica has a big day and is pulling Dickinson away from the rim and then allowing Arkansas to drive. But I don't know what's going on with the Flan stuff, so I don't know if I'll bet this, but I'm going to advance Kansas on sell first Calipari. I'm keeping it simple. Tanner, what do you see here?
Yeah, I kind of want to bet the Hogs, and I'm hesitant to pull this trigger because of all the uncertainty, but I just will never, ever, ever be able to get behind this Jayhawk offense. The Harris, Adams, Dickinson core, I hate it. Zero spacing. They're stuck trying to create ball screen cutting, high-low sets in crowded lanes. They get nothing at the rim. They never get to the line. They create zero catch and shoot opportunities. I just loathe this offense. And, Arkansas's defense has had some very questionable moments over the past few weeks, but they were a legit good interior defense in January. And they have all sorts of interior size to kind of park in the lane and at the rim, which is all you need to do against Kansas. On the other end of the court, again, super hesitant to back Arkansas's half-court execution, especially without Darrow. But they've scored over 80 in 4 of 6 games during his absence. Stuckey, you mentioned it. I really think pick and pop and hard roll creation from Big Z and Adu will be the difference against the slow-footed Dickinson. Move him around, make him defended space, punish him. And my real handicap comes down to, I think the Jayhawks' typically good transition defense is starting to show cracks. UCF and Arizona combined for 36 transition points on 31 possessions in the Big 12 tournament, whopping 1.16 points per possession. And while I don't trust Arkansas's half-court offense, they're still lethal in transition. So looking long and hard at the Razorbacks here.
Calabrese?
Yeah, this is a weird subtraction by addition situation with Boogie Fland. I want no part of it because this offense did not work with him. And is he going to come off the bench? Is he going to be a role player? Is he going to start? At the very least, I want to see it live and get a feel for what Calipari is going to do. I've also hated this Kansas team for the reasons enumerated by Tanner here. So this is just a pure pass for me.
Calabrese, well, you're not passing. Before we share our thoughts, you're getting crazy in Yale, Texas A&M. Texas A&M 7.5 point favorite. 7:25 Eastern on TBS. You're betting in Texas A&M alts?
Yes. So this is the Anthony DeBundo special, an Action Network alum. Now he's over at The Ringer, and he texted me about a month ago, and he said, I'm going to go with a hater perspective, at least pitch an article to the Ringer staff and say, hey, listen, every year people come out, they tout all these Cinderellas, and then they get their doors blown off either in the round of 64 or the round of 32. I want to wear the black hat and essentially go with the favorites and say why these Cinderellas are deeply flawed. My thought on this is pretty simple, and I think you're going to agree with me, Stuck. It's if I can get even a reasonable 3-point performance, I'm saying 30% from the Aggies. If they go 7 for 21 from 3-point range, everything else that they do, namely crash the glass in such an insane way, number 1 team in offensive rebounding percentage, I think there's a chance that this could be a runaway. And if you look at some of the games that they've covered this year against power conference teams, they doubled the spread in a cover over Ohio State, beat Texas by 20 during the regular season, drilled this Georgia team that we just talked about athletically, causing so many problems for teams by 16. I think Yale, if the shots are not falling, if Poulikitis does not, put on a repeat performance of being a March Madness hero last year when they upset Auburn, I could see this going away from Yale in a big way. And at plus 520 for the Aggies to win by 20 points, it has my interest. I'm in love with so many Cinderellas in this field and the potential for not just one win, but to get to the second weekend. I've watched a decent amount of Yale this year. I love what they have in their backcourt. And Mbang, I think, potentially could make life really difficult on Wade Taylor in this game. But if the threes fall, all of a sudden the math and the analytics shift so dramatically to the Aggies that I think there's just too much value to pass up on this. This is the kind of bet that if you hit, it could cover up every other sin, every other mistake, misread that you make all day Thursday. So I'm going to go with the Aggies to win going away.
The problem here is that DeBundo bet Yale.
Oh, so. Yeah. He immediately texted me when I screenshot it at the Action app, and he goes, you don't know ball. So, I mean, the fact that he's a hater on this, he goes from his hater article to hating on me. It's right on brand for him.
Well, you said I was probably going to agree. I completely disagree. I bet Yale, even though I love Texas A&M. I tweeted out the second Yale won, Texas A&M doesn't want to face this Yale team. And lo and behold, it's the second thing revealed on the bracket show. Why? Yale, number 1, goes under everything, really compact defense, force you to shoot a ton of threes. Texas A&M can't shoot. Like they shoot 30%. Maybe Wade Taylor is one of his, electric games from 3, but he's going up against a really strong defensive point guard in Mbang. Maybe like Wilcher comes in and has a stretch of like 4 to 5 threes, but they show us they can't shoot. They need to get on the offensive glass. Yale is an elite defensive rebounding team, 22nd in the nation. Now you can say they play in the Ivy, no one offensive rebounds in the Ivy. Well, they were 12th nationally in their 8 games against the top 150. And this team has proven under James Jones over and over again, they can rebound with the big boys. Did it last year against Auburn. But the data point that I'm most confident in that they can compete here, because they have real size and they attack and they're compact. 2016, when they upset Baylor, and Baylor was like right up there with where Texas A&M is in terms of offensive rebounding. I think they they rebounded like 41%. Texas A&M leads the country at 42% this year. They shut down that Baylor team on the offensive glass. They got 29 defensive rebounds in that game. That was the Baylor team with Motley, Torian Prince, all those guys who could just get on the glass. And Yale ended up winning that game. And they only shot 5 of 16 from 3. So I think they can compete on the defensive glass, and they're going to force Texas A&M to shoot, limit their second chance opportunities, which is basically their second chance offense is their offense. Their first chance offense is so bad. And I think they have a guy like Pulikitis. If he's hot, they could pull off this upset. The only thing that worries me, again, I hate how this card broke, is that Yale played on Sunday, gets shipped out to Denver, and has to play in altitude after winning their conference championship on Sunday against a rested Texas A&M squad that has a ton of depth. Texas A&M also has Wade Taylor, who's a foul baiter. He's one of my favorite players, but he just baits fouls. And in their front court, they can't have Alaton get in foul trouble against their front court, and they can't have Mbang get in foul trouble against Taylor. So what's the whistle look like in this game? That's important because Yale doesn't have great depth. And those are the two they really need from a defensive perspective. They're the heads of the snake. But I think it's a bad matchup for A&M. I think Yale's going to be right there in the end. Unless, A&M just has an outlier shooting performance, which is extremely difficult to...
I'll have 2 quick counters on this, because I agree it was shocking, some of the rebounding last year. Danny Wolf in this field, not playing for Yale. So overall size, if you look at the power forward, the 4, and the center for Yale, they're 248th and 252nd, I believe, in overall height. And the fouls will come into play. But what's interesting, when I brought up the Ohio State, the Texas, the Georgia game where A&M won going away against quality opponents, only against Ohio State did they shoot even marginally well from three-point range. I think they shot 7 for 21 from three-point range. In the other games, they were up to their old tricks. They still found a way to win going away against those quality opponents. So it's an added bonus. I certainly need them to shoot well to cover a huge number like this, but I just think the opportunity for the roof to cave in, because everyone in terms of the Yale locker room, they know, let these guys shoot. Like, we don't have to crash out on every single shooter because they've spent the entire season, really the last 2 or 3 years, not being able to throw it in the ocean. I think there's an opportunity for some open looks and maybe being a half step late. So all those things, and having to go out to altitude with rest being an issue. Yale is a team that I really liked for most of the season, and they certainly outclassed the Ivy. But I think this is a big jump up athletically, and if they get into any foul trouble in that front court, it could be curtains.
Yeah, I don't know. I trust Yale. Like the Ivy too. Ivy's always been good in the tourney. Whenever, like last year against Auburn, they were outclassed athletically. Against that Baylor team, outclassed athletically. We've seen Harvard do this. I trust Yale to keep this close. Tanner, break the tie.
Yeah, I agree with Stuckey. All in on Yale. You got the handicap, Stuck. I'll just add 3 quick things. Texas A&M ranks 4th nationally in rebounding plus turnover differential, plus 330. Yale is top 20, plus 220. Like you said, they good rebounding squad, doesn't turn the ball over. They can hang with the Aggies in the extras battle. Part 2, Yale's defense, under screen, pack it in, deny the rim. They have a legit good rim protector too, and they're going to force everything over the top. I'm a little worried about them hanging in one-on-one matchups. I don't think they're a great ISO defense, but if you force Texas A&M to shoot threes, that's how you beat them. Finally, Yale's offense was initially worried that their downhill, somewhat rim-reliant ball screen motion would get smoked by Texas A&M's aggressive switch and post denial. But the Bulldogs are super legit. They're a super legit spacing and shooting offense, generate a super high unguarded catch and shoot rate. That is so key against A&M. And you know that James Jones can push the right buttons and adjust his offense in a tournament setting. And they could also initiate offense from 3 different spots on the floor. So you can kind of work off ball and pit A&M's aggressiveness against them. And finally, like you said, Stuck, the Ivy's a damn good league. The top of this league competes with everyone consistently. So I expect more of the same. Give me Yale.
Yeah, Yale earlier this season, for what it's worth, lost by 8 at Purdue, 92-84. All right, let's move on to pretty intriguing game in the night slate, 7:35 Eastern on True TV between Drake and Missouri in Wichita, Kansas. Missouri is 6.5-point favorite, total 132.5. Pace clash. Missouri wants to run, get out in transition. Drake allows the fewest transition possessions in the country, and they run in transition at the lowest rate in the country. I was surprised to see that Drake actually leads the country in points per possession against press defense. Now, they're not saying like Missouri presses, but that was surprising to me. Missouri's going to press. Missouri's going to zone. I keep going back and forth in this game because I think Missouri can blow up what Drake wants to do with their athleticism and like they're mixing up their defense. Like go up the zone rates to, make it harder and take longer for Drake to get into their offense, which they just want to grind you down and frustrate you and then score within like the last possible second of the shot clock. You zone in the half court to do that as well because Drake will turn it over, get out and transition when you can. So that's what I worry about for Drake. The athletic mismatch, Missouri being able to blow up their offense with their changing defenses and their press. But if you're going to run zone, you're going to change. Like Drake could also live on the offensive glass, which is a concern. I keep going back and forth in this game. I'm going to have to, I might have to, well, I'm not sleeping right now, but I'm going to have to lay down on the couch, shut my eyes and think about this more over the next couple of days and dig in. Because I keep going back and forth, but I am worried for Drake due to the athletic mismatch and what Missouri can do defensively with switching up their looks, pressing. I don't know. Help me out here, Tanner. Do you see anything here?
Nope. I have literally the same exact thoughts as you. Who wins the pace battle? Drake's going to grind the game to a halt, run the relentless middle ball screens. Missouri's going to leverage their on-ball pressure into turnovers and then try to go downhill, run out buckets, free throw attempts. On one hand, you mentioned it, like they're kind of a sloppy ball handling team and they foul a lot. And so if the Tigers do force those turnovers, they'll be able to play their games. And I really worry about their athleticism in that one-on-one defense, that ISO defense. I think Missouri could just mismatch hunt with Mitchell Robinson Bates, right, all night. And they can also, I think they could run their off-ball screening stuff against a Drake defense that struggles against those sets. But on the other hand, Missouri, like you said, can't rebound, fouls like crazy, plays right into Drake's hands. To me, this entire handicap comes down to what Ben McCollum draws up against Dennis Gates' zone pressure looks. Like you said, Stuckey, like if he dials those up more. Because, Missouri, excellent ball screen cover squad because the zone looks neutralize those actions. But, Drake has been a good zone offense on very limited possessions. We don't really have a sample size there. I'm partial to thinking that McCollum's wizardry will scheme up the right actions. And if Drake can still play elite transition defense despite the turnovers, pace should stay slow. So it could be hard for the Tigers to get past 3 possessions in that type of game script. Drake or nothing for me, but I don't think I'll bet this game.
Yeah, it's interesting that Drake, they turn it over a lot, 279th turnover rate, but they don't allow anything in transition. How's that possible?
It
well,
doesn't make sense.
They're 59th in steal rate allowed. And the reason for that is that a lot of their turnovers are just like, there's a lot of shot clock violations. And there's not a lot of live ball steals, which lead out to runouts, which they would be in trouble allowing against Missouri. So the numbers there's a lot of turnovers like by design in a way, just how they want to run their offense and how they want to score like the last possible second. Like obviously they don't want to turn it over and have a shot clock violation, but they're not as deadly or as fatal as, steals would be. And they're just kind of a byproduct of what they want to do by running their offense and grinding opposing defenses down with their middle pick and roll. Mike, you do like Drake.
Yeah, I can take Drake plus 6.5. You hit on all the points. It's going to be a turtle-like tempo. They're not going to give up much of anything in transition, or at least that's the plan. They've stuck to that for the entire year. They've only lost one game the entire season by more than 6 points. And I think we're going to look back on this, and it's probably going to take some time in terms of him getting his next job and how he does with that program. But I think in 10 years, we're going to look back and say, we had Ben McCollum, a 5-time Division II Coach of the Year, against Dennis Gates, who's won one NCAA tournament game. I think there's something to be said for that in terms of he's a grinder. He's an X's and O's guy. He's someone who preps. I think about Brian Dutcher at San Diego State. These guys aren't, big into self-promotion or necessarily being name brands, but they just live for moments like this. And when you look at Evan Mia in terms of the 68 teams in the field, Drake is 5th in terms of playing better basketball when they face better competition. And at the end of the game, in the last 4 to 6 minutes of this, Bennett Sturtz going to have the ball consistently. I trust this guy. He's the 14th rated combo guard in the entire field by Mia. He's in the 99th percentile on the offensive end. And per KenPom, he's just an absolute nail shooter. You look at his entire statistical profile, he can knock down threes. And if he is fouled with the ball late, he's a nails foul shooter as well. So 6.5, I think, is just a little too rich. I've gone back and forth. I'm going to have to do the Stuckey treatment, lay down, close my eyes, try to envision exactly what happens. Am I putting Drake through to the next round? I don't know, but I'm certainly taking him with 6.5.
All right, let's move on to Utah State, UCLA, 9:25 Eastern on TNT. Kick off the late slate. I know you're passing here, Mike. Tanner, you lean Utah State. I actually like UCLA. Hoping this line drops just a little bit more. I just think, Utah State, you're going to see a lot of zone here. They're the most zone-heavy defense in the tournament. 2-3 zone, they're going to try to turn teams over, and ultimately they want to get out in transition, and they also just try to prevent teams from getting to the rim. But they don't allow anything at the rim, 7th percentile. But UCLA doesn't try to score at the rim, literally, 3rd percentile. So I think that strength is kind of neutralized. And as a result of its defensive structure, Utah State does allow a ton of catch-and-shoot threes. Bruins are average in that department. But I think that they're going to be able to find ways to operate in the mid-range, and that's where they live and thrive. So I think – and this defense has been figured out, I think. Since February 1st, Utah State 201st in overall defensive efficiency. Prior to that, 107th over their first 20 games. And UCLA takes care of the ball. As long as you take care of the ball against Utah State this Utah State defense, you're going to score on them. And then you're going to prevent them from getting out in transition. And that's where they're good. And UCLA's defense is a bit vulnerable, which worries me a bit. And UCLA's offense did grade out very well in zone offense this season, although they didn't see much of it, and it was against clowns. But I think there's a couple things. I think they're going to be able to operate in the mid-range. They're not going to turn it over. I think they're going to up their press rate here. UCLA is going to pressure Utah State. Utah State grades out in just the 18th percentile in press offense. I've watched them struggle with some of the better presses it's faced this season. I think they're going to struggle in that department. It's also worth noting, late in the game. If UCLA gets behind in this game, I'm definitely going to look for them live too. But I'm out on this Utah State team. Also, altitude Mountain West team. This will be in Lexington. I like UCLA. Do you have any quick thoughts on Utah State, Tanner?
Yeah, and
What I'm worried about is UCLA will give up a lot of threes. Utah State can shoot. So if they're making their threes, they obviously can win this game. But I think there's more avenues to UCLA is more consistent.
Yeah, and you make a fair point in that I can't quite figure out if UCLA can beat the Utah State zone because, like you said, graded out well against zone defense, fairly low volume. But on one hand, on the surface, I was like, okay, UCLA probably doesn't profile as a zone team because they can't generate those precious interior, post-up opportunities against the zone. But on the other hand, I think that these mid-range reliant teams with shot-creating forwards like Tyler Bilodeau profile okay against zone because you can just kind of run the offense through him in the high post, although he's not much of a playmaker. He's a good shot maker. But to me, on the other end of the court, I love this UCLA half-court set defense, but they're one of the nation's most aggressive ball screen coverage defenses, and they're hard hedges. And you generally beat those with that weak side catch and shoot creation, like you talked about, Stuckey, which Utah State is great at. They're elite at with spacing, shot selection, off-ball screening actions, 3 excellent marksmen off the wing. So I get by default, I lean towards Utah State, who I think I trust their offense more, especially catching over 5 against the UCLA team that you might be worried about the altitude team. What about UCLA away from the Pacific time zone? 2-7 away from the West Coast this year. They're 361st in Haslametrics away from home metric. I wish I had more confidence in that.
Do you want to tell me what Utah State is away from home metric?
Oh God, what, 364th?
Probably. I don't know to be sure, but I'm assuming they were way down there.
349th.
Yeah. So I get if you want to pick an upset, then they're very. You want to pick them to go to the Sweet 16, play unique style. They're very inconsistent. So
I just think if they make their shots, they'll keep it.
Yeah,
close.
they're going to get chances to shoot threes. Again, the UCLA's defense is going to allow They're going to get.
And then you trade threes for twos, and you kind of start winning the math battle. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if UCLA is going to solve the zone. You think the zone has been solved? I'm still hesitant on it.
All right, let's move on to Omaha, St. John's. St. John's 18.5-point favorite in Providence, Rhode Island. This will tip off 9:45 Eastern on CBS. St. John's, they have some 3-point regression coming toward both ways over the past month. I'm not a believer in St. John's. I love Patino. I love their defense. Don't trust their offense. By the way, you want to go KenPom, pull up St. John's profile. Tell me how many teams in the top 25 of KenPom that St. John's beat this year. The answer is 0. Entire season. So I think the Big East was way down this year. Can Omaha hang here? They got a couple things working on the favor. They're good on the defensive glass. They're top 20. You got to be against St. John's, and who's 9th in offensive rebounding. You can't turn it over. They've been good in that department. You got to make threes over St. John's defense. Omaha can do that. Top 50 3-point shooting at 36%. They were even 40% during league play. With all that said, it all came against the Summit League schedule. So, defense is optional in that conference. This is a huge step up athletically. Also, Omaha's just going to pack this in. They have no rim protection, no size. Pack it in. They're going to pray St. John's shoot threes, which they can't do, and they're due to start missing a lot again. So does St. John's fall in love with the threes, and can Omaha compete on the defensive glass? I think for a bit, it's going to be hard for them to score unless they're making some threes, but it does scare me too. Their point guard has improved, JJ White, but earlier this season, they played UNLV in Minnesota, who pressed them, and it was a disaster. They scored 0.5 and 0.6 points per possession. Well, St. John's has that press, but on steroids. So, this team, all they do, this team just covers. They've been undervalued for so long. Same with Robert Morris, by the way. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Robert Morris has covered 16 of 17. I think the Omaha can hang for a little. Maybe they probably get worn down eventually. And then St. John's probably puts a run on them in the second half. I'm going to advance St. John's here, but I'm thinking about Omaha first half. Tanner, you lean Omaha?
Yeah, all the same thoughts. Should avoid getting ripped apart in the extras. They're good in transition denial, and like you said, they play that compact man-to-man scheme. If you a good way to beat the Johnnies, slow them down, keep them out of transition, turn them into jump shooters in the half court.
Yeah.
On the other end of the court,
and they get the defensive rebounds. They profile like they can.
Yeah.
But they're going to be athletically at a disadvantage and a size disadvantage.
They kind of feel. They kind of feel.
If St. John's makes the threes, who cares? They're going to win by.
Yeah. But Omaha kind of feels like a team built for March. Good guard play, grit, tough shot makers, and I think that their tough shot making. Yeah. I think their tough shot making can play there because the Johnnies allow a super high off the dribble jumper rate, aren't great at defending those actions, at least according to the shot quality data. And that's how Omaha shoots, right? They don't really move the ball or generate catch and shoot opportunities, but it's more just JJ White and Tony Osborne pulling up in your face. So I do kind of like the matchup for Omaha. I can't get there with this level of athleticism disadvantage. Like you said, I think that the Johnnies, like they do so many times, especially in the non-con against low major teams, I saw it 3 or 4 times, they'll just start to lean on you and start to overwhelm you in the shot volume battle. And look, the Mavs, they were crushed in the non-con. They got destroyed by Iowa State in their only high, upper echelon matchup. So I lean Omaha, but I don't think I can get there.
What do you see, Calabrese?
I'm going to go with an exotic here out of DraftKings. Largest comeback of the game by 5 or more points, plus 170. And you talked about what St. John's can go cold. They're buried in the 300s and 3-point percentage. They're 201st in half-court points per possession. You see those weird possessions where Kadari starts becoming like the de facto point guard. That doesn't necessarily work. I could see them going on a cold streak. Can Omaha lead 8-2? 12-6, 14-7. I can certainly envision it. You talked about JJ White. He shoots 44% from 3-point range. Just give me a couple of those. Markel Sutton, I think, could hold on the defensive glass, at least for the first 5 to 10 minutes of this game. So in a very small sample size, can I get them out in front and go ahead and grab an early lead? But I just need 5 points. So I think plus 170 is an interesting way to fade a St. John's team that offensively was running very hot there at the end. I think they'll return to who they are a little bit and be able to grind out these games in the first weekend. It won't be pretty. And for that reason, I think this is just an interesting way to attack a game that otherwise I don't want to be sweating out foul shots late with the Johnnies trying to cover a big number.
Yeah, Johnnies are kind of like Michigan State with like their depth, their physicality, but they'll come out slow. Like, and they can get behind against anybody, then just put a run on you. Before we get to the grand finale of UCSD Michigan, UNC-W, Texas Tech, I lean Tech. I think they're going to be at full strength. I'm hearing they will be, but injury uncertainties keep me off. I wrote up that game in many of my pieces. That'll be on the Action Network app. Tanner, you like the total there?
Yeah, I like the over. And the reason why I like the over is that the Seahawks are going to run everything through the post, through just the massive Harlan Obioba and Kamari McGriff. And I at first I was like, okay, Texas Tech can hang down there with Toppin and Federico. But I'm not entirely sure because they've been kind of cooked lately in their post-up defense. Over the past 5 games, they've allowed 52 points on 41 post-up sets to Arizona, Baylor, Arizona State, Colorado, and Kansas. That's 1.27 points per possession. That's insane for post-up efficiency. And if the big boys, of the Seahawks get Texas Tech in foul trouble, that's another issue. I mean, the Raiders fouled a lot in Big 12 play this year.
Whistle's big here. If they call this tight, that'll help UNC Wilmington.
Exactly. And on the other end of the court, Texas Tech is just a firecracker. And now they're fully healthy. I mean, they're elite off the dribble. They're elite in their short roll and pop creation. They're a top 10 spacing and shot making squad. On one hand, I looked at it and the Seahawks actually grade out really well against the dribble and roll defense, like dribble and roll actions. But if you look deeper, opponents shot 27% from 3 off ball screen actions against the Seahawks this year on super high volume. Their basic man-to-man passive ball screen coverage defense, it ranks, I think, 300th nationally in 3-point rate allowed. So I think an elite offense like Texas Tech should just be able to destroy them off those actions. And I looked over, and the projections, by the way, seem to make this above market. I think I got over 143.5. Evan Miles at 145, Bart Torvik's at 145, shot quality's at 151, Sean Kerner, he's at 147. And, I think the Wilmington defense is a tad overvalued, and I think that they should be able to bully ball their way to points and free throws to also help lengthen the game and cash this over, even if I think the pace is a little questionable.
Pace won't be.
But efficiency over.
But when Texas Tech does run, they're going to score at will.
Yep.
To UNC-W transition D is not good. So I think they might take some more opportunities there. You like Tech, Mike?
Yeah, another Cinderella turning into a pumpkin. The word out of Lubbock is that they're going to play with a full deck. We'll see how healthy everyone is, if they're on minutes restrictions or not. But at full strength, this is a national title contender. Shot quality has them number 3, Ken Pom and Torvik 7th. Mia has them number 9 in the whole country. And in their non-con, they covered big numbers.
I have them 5th at full strength.
Yeah, they're a phenomenal team. And you saw it in the non-con. They covered as favorites of 18.5, 22, 24.5, 27.5, 32.5. They had no problem blowing the doors off of teams that aren't at their level. And when you look at UNC Wilmington, outside of a non-conference game against Kansas, they played a really soft schedule, the 10th easiest schedule in the field, 284th nationally in that regard. And despite that schedule, they were mediocre defending inside of 10 feet and at the rim. Toppin is going to crush him in this game. He has almost 9 points per game at the rim. He's a monster on putbacks and on the offensive glass. I think this is a statement win for Texas Tech, who wants to feel good about themselves, get the ball rolling into a deep run in this tournament. I see them winning by 25 plus.
All right, let's move on to if Texas Tech's at full strength, they are designed to blow out teams like this. But let's move on to the last game. UCSD, UC San Diego, our Tritons. Taking on Michigan. Michigan 2.5-point favorite here. Total 142.5. I love UC San Diego. It's my favorite bet of the weekend. Or I should say of the first 2 days. And it's the only bet that I like and the matchup that I liked and have one of those other factors that's not working against me, which is happening in all the other games. This is the one where Michigan played 3 games in 3 days, now has to get shipped out west, play on Thursday in altitude. And by the way, Michigan fans are now saying, oh, it's fine. They're college kids. You liars. 2 weeks ago, you got blown out by Illinois and said, oh, it's 4 and 9 days. What'd you expect? Well, but this is 4 and 8 days in altitude. So if you couldn't do 4 and 9 days, What's going to happen here? I don't know. Just something that could work against them. People are disrespecting. This is such a polarizing game. I love it. On one hand, everyone's saying, you see San Diego's the most trendy dog. People, Twitter is like, it's a small echo chamber. A couple people like UC San Diego, then a bunch of people say it. And then you have people like that have like these rinky-dink sites that are saying it, and then you make TikToks about it. And then it becomes trendy. Who cares? Like, the trendy picks can win too. Then on the other side, you have books saying Michigan's the most bet team. It shows you that the Twitter echo chamber is a very small percentage of the betting population and ultimately meaningless. But people are disrespecting the shit out of the UC San Diego defense. They're not going to be able to handle the 7-footers. 7-footers, Wolf and Golden, will be problematic at times. But you don't get anything in the paint against UC San Diego by design. People don't realize how good this defense is, how their communication. They don't allow anything in the paint. They're going to run their zone with man principles. They're so connected. They're going to turn over Michigan. This turnover disparity is staggering. One of the worst turnover teams in the country versus a team that takes it away more than anybody. Despite their lack of size. And by the way, went to Utah State and won. They played San Diego State. Their biggest rival, they played three times this year, has a 7'1" guy that they go to all the time in their offense. Despite their lack of size, they're 65th in near proximity attempt rate, 71st in near proximity attempt percentage, 9th percentile in rim offense allowed, 93rd percentile in rim defense efficiency. That's their team defense. It is unbelievable across the board. The sum is so much greater than the parts, and most people just haven't watched them. So what's going to happen here? The one thing I'm most worried about, I'm not most worried about Golden and Wolf. I'm most worried about Michigan's potential 3-point regression and UC San Diego's negative 3-point regression, because they've been one of the luckiest teams in terms of 3-point shooting. Now their 2-point shooting and their 2-point defense has still been really good, but they're like 5% over both ways and 5% under on defense. And Michigan hasn't made a shot in months. They're going to get shots here. And if they make them, I'll tip my cap. But I don't trust Michigan to make shots. And now you have altitude. They might be a little fatigued. This UC San Diego offense too can beat you in so many different ways. They're going to put Michigan's bigs in conflict. Get ready to learn Tyler McGuy, one of the best shooters in the country. By the way, get ready to learn Hayden Gray, who leads the country in steals. And then get ready to learn Niwa Tate Jones, one of the most unique players in college basketball, who I think has the best vision in all of college basketball. Your point forward or run point guard, and just an unbelievable player. So fun to watch. I love this team. Could they lose? Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a coin flip game. So I took 3.5. Would still take it at 2.5. But I don't think it's going to be because they can't handle the Michigan size. Structurally, they're designed to do that. And I think their zone can really disrupt what Michigan wants to do. Can the Michigan guards make shots? If they do, I'll tip my cap. But Michigan's going to turn it over a ton. UC San Diego does not turn it over. I think they're going to win this game. I love this team. Give me the Tritons. Tanner, you agree?
Fully agree. Clean, I'll just add, you went through most of it. I'll add a few notes. UCSD's defense, they relentlessly underscreen. They double, they front the post, and they bring extra help, and it forces you into basically lazy cross-court passes. Who does that better than Danny Wolf? And I think a decent
Wolf
comp.
11 turnovers.
Yeah, and I think a decent comp here actually is Northwestern, who isn't the same level of defense, but compact post-denial, post-double defense. Danny Wolf was lost in that game. 4 points on 0 for 7 shooting. And so when you have that, type of defense coming underneath, the Michigan guards are going to have to step up and create. And I don't trust them because Hayden Gray is amazing. And the Wolverines are, like you said, Stuck, going to have to hit shots out of inside-out actions, and they haven't hit a shot in months. 27% from 3 since February 1st. Triton's ball screen set.
People are just acting like, you're just going to throw it into Golden and then there's the 6'7" guy trying to guard him in the post, and then Golden's going to turn around. That's not how UC San Diego's defense works.
You know what?
They swarmed Luketon in the 2 losses. He had 7 turnovers in those 2 losses. He was overwhelmed, and everything that you basically said, like UC Irvine was top 20 in KenPom defense, 6th in defensive rebounds. So people acting like it is going to be just absolute, unmerciful differential in terms of the talent on the floor. How about another comp? I love that you brought up Northwestern, Tanner. Another team played Michigan, and they were a 9-point underdog at the Chrysler Center. They lost by 2. They were plus 13 in the turnover margin. They made 9 triples. They did little in transition, but they still nearly won. You know what team that was? Iowa. All right? Nobody's watched Iowa in the last 3 months and said, man, they're so much better than Michigan. UC San Diego is better than Iowa. They do everything better in those metrics. They're going to win the turnover battle. So I'm with you guys. And this isn't just me coming from a place of jealousy, knowing that you, DeBundo, and Stuckey are going to sit around in your Yale basketball jerseys with Bush Sr., Bush Jr., and Clinton on the back, all enjoying them beat Texas A&M. This is me saying for all of us low-major college basketball fans that have watched this team play all year, they are a nightmare. They are an absolute nightmare to prepare for, and they're also just going to throw a lot of zone at this, the big man pick and roll that apparently Michigan fans think is some kind of riddle that cannot be cracked. Bullshit. So we're going to see. I can't wait for this game. I love that it's the absolute nightcap. We can all settle in after a day of madness and just enjoy this, public versus, pros versus Joes. However you want to argue it, the echo chamber argument that Stuckey made before. I think the Tritons are going to get this done. I'm going to take them on the money line.
Yeah, and, in the Big West Championship game, I think Irvine made a little run once Lucian went to the bench, and then he came back in, and then he was swarmed again. So it's like this team can, yeah, you're right, this team can handle skies. Only other point I wanted to make is that I love the Tritons ball screen sets, the way they're designed. They're fantastic. So much positional size, spacing, shooting. And I don't trust Michigan's ball screen coverage. They funnel dribble creation in a drop, 2 big drop, but they aren't good at stopping the dribble. I don't trust, like I said, I don't trust Michigan's guards. 0.81 points per possession allowed off the dribble. It's 37th percentile. And they're bad against rolling actions too. 1.16 points per possession allowed, 11th percentile. I also think the Tritons profile well against drop coverage with ATJ's just unique skill set. And they have a good stretch 5 too, who, can pull those guys out. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, Stuck, the only thing I'm worried about is Michigan hits everything off those inside out actions, but you have to do it. You have to do it.
It's due to give up some threes, but I'll live with that if that happens. I mean, that happens with every college basketball bet. And I get it. Michigan, I'm not disrespecting Michigan. This is about UC San Diego, not against you. But people are talking about UC San Diego. I haven't watched them at all this year. And it's not just dump it in. Like, how people are talking about this UC San Diego. It's just a bunch of accountants who are going to try to guard Vlad Golden, who's going to go for 40 in the post. That's not how this is going to work. Now, if the Michigan guards step up, they could win this game. They could win it big. And then if UC San Diego's not making shots, but
I mean, Vlad Golden was apparently the stiff just a couple of years ago. He went to the Final Four. All of a sudden he goes from off the radar to people understand, like, if you can ball, you can ball. And the recency bias of a tournament champion out of a power conference is very much real. So much airtime dedicated to it. 2 of the last 3 Big Ten tournament champs lost in the round of 64. So the recency bias is real. Don't just buy it because you think that, the name brand is going to scare away the Tritons.
All right. That'll do it for us. Tanner, I don't know if you'll be joining us yet or not tomorrow. It depends on Greg's availability. So we'll share our Final Four tomorrow. Do you want to share your Final Four as of now? You can change it in the future.
Yeah. Auburn, Duke, Texas Tech, and Xavier.
As of right now, I'll share my final one tomorrow. I got to go through again. I'm Auburn, Duke, Texas Tech, and Illinois.
We'll have a fun first round head to head there.
One of us, our brackets will be dead on the second day. All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks to Tanner and Mike for joining me. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. I'll make sure tomorrow's episode is a bit shorter. I always get too excited on the first one, but I know everyone's excited for the first day. So sorry it was an hour and a half. But thanks for tuning in. It's the best time of the year. Make sure you subscribe. Tell a friend, tell them you know the deal. Shout out to Edgeboost. By the way, next Saturday, Elite 8 Saturday, join myself, Jim Root, and the favorites, Chad and Simon in Chicago at Joe's on Weed. Just RSVP. I retweeted it today. I hope to see somebody there. It's free. Come have some drinks, sweat some games. We'll do an Elite Eight preview, myself and Jim Root. But thanks for tuning in again. Tomorrow's episode covering Friday's games. Can't wait. Good luck on all of your wagers. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.